people are always watching you, whether you know this or not, especially today, social media, all this sort of jazz. People are watching you. They're watching the way that you walk out your life and your claims and your beliefs.
Hello and welcome to the Verity channel, where our aim is to introduce you to amazing human beings who have achieved uncommon results and to uncover the steps that led to those results in a way that makes perfect sense to all of us. Now, our guest today is no better example of that, and that's Mr. Mathew Kratiuk, who is not only the CEO of one of the fastest growing digital marketing agencies, but he's also an inspirational speaker, Vinnies Brand Ambassador, and one of the top contributors to the CEO's Sleepout initiative. His journey to this point is nothing less than remarkable, having overcome a 15-year drug addiction, homelessness, membership to one of the renowned bikie clubs, and crippling loneliness, which ultimately saw him alone in a room with a gun to his head. Now, fortunately, as he sat there, something told him to put down the gun, seek help, and he found that at a Christian rehab center where he beat his addiction and became a man of faith, completely transforming his life. Today we get to know Matt and learn more about his incredible rise above adversity. Matt, thank you for joining the channel, much appreciated. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Andre, it's great to be here.
As we came into today, one of the thoughts I had was that your journey, although it being in the past now, couldn't be any more relevant to today, given the fact we've just gone through, or hopefully coming to the end of COVID as vaccines get rolled out all over the world. Now, I say that because there's many business owners who I've spoken to and people in business who have been through huge highs and huge lows during that COVID period, finding opportunities to convert their business and increase revenue, and other times almost facing bankruptcy. And as I always say, it's the journey between the low and the high that creates huge emotional ups and downs, something which you've had in the past. So with that context, I was going to ask you, could you take us right back to the beginning of your journey that saw you homelessness and also involved with drugs at a very, very young age?
Absolutely, mate. So couldn't be further from the truth. So, I came from a really good family, contrary to most people's beliefs. I came from a very loving family. I had two very loving parents, and one little brother named Adam. And our parents worked very hard to give us the best upbringing that they could. I went to a private school, went to Bankstown Grammar, and unfortunately for my family, I was a very hyperactive child. I was diagnosed with ADD at the age of 10. And although I came from this amazing family, my father was a very senior accountant, my mother was an academic and a nurse. My family split when I was about the age of 12. My parents broke up, and my father moved over to Cronulla to a little apartment there. And my brother stayed with my mother, and I decided to move over with my father. I'd actually recently been expelled from Bankstown Grammar. It was a bit of a rat bag, to say the least. And I moved over to Cronulla to live with my dad, and that's when I started going to Cronulla High. And although I'd come from this amazing family, life can sometimes break people. And now that I'm a man, many, many years later, I realised that my father he just had a lot of stuff going on for himself. He'd recently broken up with his partner of 20 years, or his wife of 20 years. His mother died, his best friend died, all in a matter of months. Wow. And my father became, an alcoholic for the first time in his life. And he'd be polishing a bottle of scotch each night and then doing it all again the next day. So, you now had two guys living under one roof. One was a 15, 16-year-old kid. And the other was an older man, but we were both very angry. We were both now becoming alcoholics. I'd started playing around with alcohol and stuff at Cronulla High with my friends and the like. And you had these two men living under one roof, pardon me, and it was just a recipe for disaster. So, the household became aggressive, and that's how I first ended up on the streets as a 16-year-old kid. That was probably the most important time of my life, and obviously when your identity is being born as a teenager or a young child, as an older child, and it would sculpt my identity for many, many years to come. It would have such a profound effect on the next 20 years of my life, and that would spiral into drug abuse, etc., and into criminality for many, many years to come.
Was there a time in that journey where, if you look back now, whether it was a trigger point or something that happened where if you caught yourself earlier in that, you think things would have been different?
Yeah, look, I certainly, someone asked me the other day, Matt, was there anything on the journey that could have changed your trajectory? And that the simple fact is probably not, because I was such an arrogant little poop. But if there was something, it would be, and this is probably a big part, Andre, of why I work so hard today. If there was one thing that could have changed my trajectory, it is if I had run into someone like me today.
Right.
And I don't mean that to toot my own horn, but to meet someone that had lived the life that I thought I wanted, had all the things that I thought I wanted, you know, the shiny cars and all that rubbish, right? And then said, hey, little buddy, let me show you a smarter way, and I'll tell you why. And that's probably a big part of why I work as hard as I do, to try and change lives at the fork in the road, as opposed to 20 years, 30 years into the behaviour that's dangerous, you know.
Spot on. And talking about that fork in the road, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you is, you've obviously changed your life remarkably since then, and we've retouched on that. Was there a specific turning point that you can think of, or was it sort of a slow, gradual change out of that?
Absolutely. So after 15 years of drug abuse and criminality and gangs and violence and, you know, jail and, you know, being shot at and shooting back and all sorts of things, I ended up, you know, the turning point in my life was I ended up going from a homeless street kid to a senior gang member over a 10-year period. And so I had nothing, and then I had everything, and then I left the club and had nothing again. And I you know, throughout that period, I was a hopeless drug addict. I would smoke ice every day. I would take Xanax. I would take steroids. I wasn't eating properly. It was an absolute mess. And the turning point came when I ended up leaving the club. I moved over to Sydney, and this was probably the darkest point in my life. I refer to it as permanent torture. And I was living in a broken down fibro shack in Glenfield in Western Sydney, which isn't the nicest place, park aside. And by this stage, I'd completely pushed everyone of value out of my life. There was no one left in my life that loved me, that would pick up the phone and answer and talk to me. I'd done the wrong thing by everyone, right? There was no one left in my life, and I refer to it as permanent torture because I don't know how to necessarily articulate what it feels like when your soul is missing, but my soul was gone, right?
Wow.
So the dreams and aspirations I once had as a child to be a famous sports star or a musician and all these great things, they were just completely taken for 20 years by drugs. And I found myself alone in this little fibro shack one day. No one left in my life. My family wouldn't answer the phone. I hadn't spoken to them for probably 7 years at that point. And there was just no one left, and I didn't know a way out. I was living in a cloud 1 minute at a time, trying to get my fix. And I had a gun there that I'd stolen from a drug dealer's house. And at this stage, I'm a 31-year-old man. And I had no life skills. I had never held a job. All these sorts of things. And on this particular day, I remember it so clearly. I just didn't have the power to go on, right? And I even when I would finally sleep, it would feel like this horrible knot in my body, like this torture in my stomach. It never left me. And obviously I had fear, there's all this crazy stuff going on. And
so had you at this stage realised this isn't good, I need to make a change, but you just didn't know the way out? Or
the change that I was about to make was that I was going to end my life, because I did not have the strength left, I thought, to pursue. And I didn't understand how to navigate a way out of where I was at all. On this particular day, I wrote a letter to my mother and my brother, and I remember it so clearly. And I said, look, I love you guys. I'm so sorry. I know this is going to break your heart, but I need you to know it's not your fault. This is not you. This is all me. And I get it. And I'm sorry, but I can't go on any further. And on this particular day, I had the gun there, and I clocked it back. I physically clocked it back. There was a bullet in the chamber, and I pressed it against my temple. You don't get any closer to suicide than that. I was ready, And
wow.
In that moment, I just as I was, screaming in anticipation about to pull this trigger, I had this vision of my little brother and I playing around the Christmas tree when we were children. And, Adam would have been 3, I would have been 7. And, our beautiful home in Georges Hall, and our parents had just bought us a golden retriever puppy that we called Huggy. And on this day, I'm chasing Adam as he's chasing Huggy around the Christmas tree. And with the gun in my hand, I'm sitting there thinking about this memory. And then I had this definitive vision of Adam just looking up at me like I was his hero, And
incredible.
And I decided to put the gun down, and I made a commitment that I was going to change my life. And what happened next was I got in touch with the Salvation Army. I had met them before in prison, and I rang them. I said, listen, man, I need some help. I need to change my life. And 3 months later, I got into that program. Certainly the most important day of my entire life was 6 weeks into that program. Now, I need you to understand, I was a very angry, violent, broken guy at this point. I had lived my whole life a certain way,
Yeah.
right? I didn't have the life skills that most people had at 30, 31, 32. And I was in a very toxic relationship at the time. And on this particular day, I was screaming abuse into a mobile phone at the lady that I was seeing.
This is whilst you're in rehab?
In rehab.
Right.
So I'm in the rehab. I'm out the front of the chapel, in fact. There was a chapel on the program. I was out the front of the chapel and I'm on the phone and I'm screaming abuse. I hate you. And she's screaming back at me, F you, and all this horrible venom stuff, right?
The rehab people are thinking, well, this is going really well at the moment for this guy.
The people in the rehab are literally running from me, right? They're like, "Ah," and I am losing it. Anyway, what happens next completely changed my life. This little lady walks out of the chapel. She walks up to me cool as a cucumber while I'm screaming. And she goes, excuse me, mate, you need to come inside. Chapel's about to start, right? And I've just gone, I just snapped at her, right? She's gone, righto, and she's walked back into the chapel. And I've hung up the phone and the fight's finished and my phone's on the table. I'm sitting at the table, stewing. And one of the guys very hesitantly walks up to me, one of the clients on the program, and goes, Matty, do you know who that was, bro? I said, who? He goes, mate, that's the boss's wife. And I'm sitting there and I've just gone, oh no, you idiot, right? And I'm sitting there.
So you're thinking you're about to get kicked out?
Oh mate, I knew I was about to get kicked out, right? So, there's signs plastered all over the rehab, first rule of the rehab, no threats of violence, right? So I'm sitting there going, my life is over. Like this lady had no idea the backstory. She had no idea that only months earlier I had a gun pressed against my temple, locked and loaded, ready to go. She had no idea of any of that, right? She had no idea that this was my last chance at life. This was it, mate. There was nowhere else to go.
You hadn't spoken to your mum at this stage, or your brother?
Nope, none of them, right? They wouldn't speak to me at that point. And what happens next changed my life. She walks out with the security guard and I'm thinking, here we go, pack your bags, bugger off. I know how this works, right? And she walks over to me. She says, excuse me, mate, can you stand up, please? I said, yeah, sure. I know how this works. Pack your bags, bugger off. What she didn't realise is, as this was happening, I was literally planning my own suicide. I knew they were going to drop me at Wyong Station. There was nothing else left for me to do and I was going to jump in front of a train. I hate to admit it.
Wow.
She says, mate, stand up, please. I stand up and then she just sort of gets under me because she's only a smaller lady and she looks up at me and she says, mate, would you mind if I gave you a hug? And I just went, what? What do you mean? She goes, well, can I give you a hug? I said, it's all right, I'm not going to hurt you. And I, mate, I didn't know what to do. The world that I'd come from, that's not how they roll, right? So I just very awkwardly sort of leant in and she just grabbed me, man, and she just goes, mate, come here, it's okay. And she just wrapped her arms around me. And even now I get emotional, but I hadn't cried in 20 years, not a tear. I'd become a very stone cold, remorseless, textbook sociopath, I guess, but on this particular day, I just exploded, mate. And I mean, we're talking 30 years of tears at that point, just exploded. And what happened was so profound because, I'd built this concrete wall around my body that no one gets in. Matty K, and this lady just went bang, just busted it wide open. What happened then, Andre, didn't happen overnight. Transformation's not a quick journey, I can assure you. But I realised I was in a place where I was safe and I could get well, right? And what would follow then was 13 months of very intense therapy, peeling back layer after layer and digging deep to find out who Matt Kratiuk is.
Wow. Yeah. So that's 6 months into the journey, and it took another 13 months after that of continuous working at it before you actually... Correct,
yeah. 13 months, even little things in the program, which are very intentional, right? And this is built around the, automaticity, the repetition of things until you become familiar, right? And I remember being in the program for a couple of months and we did work therapy, right? And work therapy was meant to teach guys like me who at the time had no work life, had no work skills, had no career skills, and how to work, right? And I remember we had to get up at 6 a.m. and go to work for 2 hours. And I remember thinking at the time, who the hell goes to work for 2 hours? Which is obviously very funny and trivial today, considering our lives. But yeah, it was an amazing program, and I certainly owe it to them. Changed my life.
It's an amazing story, and I guess, as I say it again, is that emotional journey that you go through, and on top of the physical one, which is often the hardest journey to travel, right? So you're 30, at this stage, 31, 32 years
33
old.
33 when I'd finished the program. Yep.
Hadn't held down a position for too long, as I think you said earlier, let alone an executive position in the business.
Correct.
How the hell at 32, 33 years old did you not only change the trajectory personally, but also got people in business to actually look at you from positions employing you?
I was very blessed. So I came out of that program, I did a diploma in business while I was in the program.
Okay.
I graduated my diploma, and then I won the Industry Excellence Award out of 60,000 students that year. But I came out into the big wide world. I had no resume, Andre. I didn't have a work history, so I was going for all these amazing roles. And you need to know, at the time, there was quite media about my story, about my transformation. Good media, right? Online stuff, and talking about my transformational journey. And one of these outlets put out a story that the front page of this story was me standing there like that. And the first line was, Matt Kratiuk has lived a life of violence, drugs, and extreme crime. Right.
Kidding.
So,
wow.
Although every HR department that you go for a role with is going to look that stuff up and just go, and that's what was happening. I went for 30 roles in a matter of months. I got knocked back for every one of them after the interview, right? And I didn't know why. I then met a company through a friend called High Pages, Home Improvement Pages, which is the #1 site in Australia to hire a tradesperson from. Amazing tech story, amazing tech company, an amazing story, an amazing Australian story. And at the time, 330 staff, an office at the Hilton in Sydney, and it's certainly the dream, right? It was the dream. I made it into that company after applying for this role, and a friend did refer me to the company. But I was so quiet about my story, like I kept it under wraps, and I assumed that maybe I had fluked my way in there. Maybe the HR department had not read anything about the Matt Kratiuk story. 3 months into that journey, I went for a lunch with the CEO, a guy named David Vitek, who today is certainly one of my dearest friends, someone who I just love and adore. And he was the founder and CEO of High Pages. And he took me out for lunch to not only welcome me to the business, but to let me know that he was hyper aware of every single article, of every part of my story, and that he had met with his team that had brought this to his table.
Right.
And he said, listen, this guy has worked his butt off. Someone needs to give him a go.
To recognise the work ethic.
This is one of Australia's greatest CEOs, certainly at the time. One of Australia's greatest entrepreneurs, and he saw something in me that other people didn't recognise. I don't even think David, as good a friend as he is to me today, I don't think he understands the gravity of what he did for me that day. He gave me the authority to be in a completely new world for me. I realised then, I belong here. I'm allowed to be here. And it just took off. I mean, I worked harder than anyone I know. I created results for them greater than anyone had, and it just took off.
There's something quite profound there that you said, and I think it's something that anybody watching this today probably should take a note of, and that is that you said earlier that you built these walls around you earlier in your life.
Absolutely.
Would it be fair to say that it's because you broke those walls down that you finally opened to receive help along the way? 100%. You really have to make yourself uncomfortable to become comfortable, or to stay comfortable. I intentionally give myself a level of uncomfort at all times to sort of keep myself comfortable and fitted, and in a continued space of growth. And I think having such, I've been very blessed. That whole experience, having this profound transformational moment in my life, it's certainly unleashed in me for the first time in my life a level of emotional intelligence that I didn't understand before. Why it did that is because suddenly I became a guy that was so much more reflective, right? Yep.
In comparison. And as you said earlier when you introduced me, leadership is a direct result of character, right? But character, in my view, is a direct result of contrast, right? Of experiencing things from such profoundly different level, right?
Because it stretches you, right?
Of course, right? And it's the same reason why I make myself uncomfortable all the time, to grow, right? You know, it's the same reason I understand how to talk to anyone, because I have spoken to everyone. I've spoken to gang members and killers and, you know, all sorts of things, and I've spoken to CEOs and I've spoken to execs and etc. Right? So it's the same principle with life.
Somebody I spoke to a long time ago, and it's always stuck with me, has said that the one thing we've all got in common is our humanity. Regardless of how much money we've got in the bank, and if we're a CEO or somebody that's in a gang, for example, at the end of the day, we're all human beings.
We are. And, you know, I've been very blessed, obviously, that I've seen many different demographics in my time, and I've been a big part of many different demographics. I've got to tell you, mate, whether you're a gang member, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a politician, whether you're even a police officer, who, by the way, I never used to like at all.
Funny that.
Funny that, you're not wrong. There is goodness in everything, right? There are beautiful people in every demographic, every race, every culture, every creed, and I just, you know, I was a naive fool. I was a naive fool to judge, and we all are, to judge any entity as one. You just have to take people for what they are to you and give it back 10 times. That's it. And if you can live that way, you will live an organically peaceful and beautiful life.
Well said, mate. Couldn't agree more. Now, you mentioned the guys at High Pages, and I've got, through the research that our office manager at Verity, Mal, has done, got a lot of research and a lot of articles and clippings. So one of those things is an extract from your LinkedIn profile. And there's a hashtag or a creed, whatever you want to call it, that keeps on coming up every time that we've looked at anything, and that is greater than yesterday.
I'm glad it keeps coming up.
I'm assuming there's a deeper meaning in there for you?
Absolutely, mate. This is the philosophy that hangs over my life. It is the reason why I live the life that I live today, and it's been such a profound part of my continued transformation, which, make no mistake, is always 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and there's plenty of step backs, right? Believe me, I'm certainly not perfect. But greater than yesterday is a very simple principle, and I guess a great way to demonstrate that principle. In 1935 in Akron, Ohio, there were 2 guys, Bill and Bob, and I'm not making those names up, that was their names, Bill and Bob. 1935 in Akron, and Bill and Bob were very successful men. Bob, one of them was a doctor, the other was a very senior executive, very intelligent guys, and they met because both of their lives had become extremely unmanageable due to alcohol, right? And they were trying to figure a way out of that place. And what would happen from that one meeting is that Alcoholics Anonymous would be spawned, right? Just some stats on that. Today, there's more than 2 million members, current members, right? And since 1935, this is the thing that I love the most. Since 1935, that program has influenced or affected the lives of more than 2 billion people.
Kidding, 2 billion.
Can you fathom that, right? From one little meeting. But the point is this, that program, the Alcoholics Anonymous program, is built on the 12 steps and the 12 principles of AA, which we've probably all heard of before. But the 12 steps and the 12 principles are hinged on one profound little saying, right? Or statement. And that is 1 day at a time. The principle of removing myself from next week and removing myself from last week and falling in love with the process of my day, right? And then coming to the understanding that all I have to do as a human is wake myself up at 6 a.m. in my case, right? And make it back to my pillow that I woke up from that night and just be a little bit better than I was yesterday, right? That immediately takes the stress and the weight off. It becomes something that is so naturally organic. For me, what does that articulate and look like? For me, it literally looks like laying on my pillow for the last 5 to 10 minutes of every day and literally going through my day as an itinerary, right? And asking what I did. Well, you know, at 11 o'clock, I had an interview with Andre and Verity Consulting, and you know, I probably should have said this a little bit different, not in a manic way, but just going through
reflecting, right?
Day, right? Reflection, right? You know, I shouldn't have told Jenny to bugger off. That was probably, I should probably ring her tomorrow and apologise. Right, sorry, Jenny, whoever Jenny is. And that's it, right? And what happens is, without even trying, Andre, you will wake up a year, 2, 3 years later, and you'll just look around at your life and you'll go, wow, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened?
You stacked a number of those days together over time, right?
That's it, right? And it's the cultural theme to my life. It is the cultural theme to our business. You will see it splashed all over our walls. They're words that we live by. It's the way that we treat our customers. It's the way that we run our campaigns. I love it. It's life-changing.
And it relates, and it kind of goes beyond, I guess, into mindfulness. They say that you should live in the now, because if you live in the future, you'll become anxious, and if you live in the past, you'll become live in despair.
So true, right? So true.
So no, I love that. It's fantastic. So if we think about it, because you're obviously involved in marketing, we'll talk about that in just a second. So whenever I've sat in businesses and we're talking about their brand,
sure,
we often talk about, okay, there's a brand and you get your tagline, and everything is like the tip of the iceberg goes down from your tagline, including your values that you then live by after that as a brand. That's your tagline?
Our tagline is actually digital that delivers for the brand. We've certainly got greater than yesterday as the theme to our people.
Got it. So are there, I guess, personally then, a set of values that you say that you would live your life by as well, if you sort of think about it?
Absolutely. So, mate, in regards to values, there's probably a few things that have really changed my life. I think probably two in fact. Number one, obviously I became a man of faith in that program. Having a faith in something for the first time in my life, mind you, at that point, certainly revamped my values. It certainly moved the moral compass. My old life values were not something I worked on a lot, but having a profound faith certainly made very, very clear values on my doorstep, right? One of the great sayings that I heard as I was coming out of that program was actually a gospel reference, and it said, preach the gospel everywhere you go, and when necessary, use words. In other words, you actually don't need to speak to preach the gospel.
Gotcha.
You just need to act. In other words, it's the way that you walk, right? And that people are always watching you, whether you know this or not, especially today, social media, all this sort of jazz. People are watching you. They're watching the way that you walk out your life and your claims and your beliefs, right? So it's in your actions, not your words. That's probably number one. And in regards to leadership, obviously today I'm very blessed that I run a successful business and that I do a lot of leadership training and get to mentor a lot of younger guys, which I love, obviously. And a big one for me there is if serving is below you, leadership is beyond you. Period. Right now, I've got to tell you, I've had a very blessed career. I've worked for some amazing companies. There have also been times where I've had some leadership I was not impressed by at all. Yep. And the profound difference between the two was that the leaders that understood what I just said, that if serving is below you, leadership is beyond you. In other words, and it's a very ingrained old way of leadership. It's certainly changing a lot today, thankfully. And the businesses that are on the front foot of that really thrive, right? These entrepreneurial, out-of-the-box thinking businesses, that's where it comes from, right? Is leaders that pick up the shovel, have a dig. I'll give you a great example, right? In nature, it comes up with so many great examples of our life, right? There's so many mirrors there. If you ever see a school of fish swimming, right? The leader of that school is doing the exact same action as the rest of the fish.
Yeah, well said.
He's just doing it first. Do you understand? So, and this is the philosophy in regards to leadership that has really allowed me to grow extremely successful teams, and create profound year-on-year growth. Yeah.
When we started Verity about 2016, one of the statistics that I read, which is on the Australian Bureau of Statistics website, spoke about the success rate of businesses when they have a strong leadership team versus when they don't.
Yep.
And one of the things that I thought was profound is that it said even if you have a business that's got a fantastic product, works, it's in fantastic market conditions, etc., but it's got a poor leadership team, then you're still destined to fail compared to a business that's got a great leadership team, inferior product, competing market conditions. So you're right, I couldn't agree with you more. It all starts with leadership as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
So talking about leadership, one of the programs, as we said at the start, that you're deeply involved with is the CEO Sleepout.
Yes.
And is it right that you've been involved since about 2019?
I've been involved a little bit earlier than that, but I've been a brand ambassador for Vinnies since 2019. Yep.
Fantastic. So from what I've read, and please correct me if this is wrong, the organisation to date has raised over $30 million since 2005.
Yep.
and last year alone generated $5.7 million.
Correct.
That's phenomenal.
It is.
So the funds raised go to beds, food items, and support centres, and ongoing individual support programs as well, obviously. Now, there's a couple of things that shock me. So, according again to the Australian Bureau of Statistics website, there's 116,000 Australians that are currently experiencing homelessness today. Goes beyond. Of those, over half are under the age of 35, and 14% are under the age of 12.
Yep.
It's heartbreaking. I've got 2 younger kids myself, so killed me reading that. So, given your involvement with the Sleepout, when you looked at it and first started looking at joining it, were there any surprises? Maybe some of those surprises led you to become involved in the first place?
Absolutely, and just reflecting on my story, obviously I became a street kid as a kid, right? So, if you just think about what we've spoken about today, that had a devastating effect on my life for 20 years, right? And it has taken so much resource, so much money, so much love and support to pull me out of that place. And I'm really sad to say that doesn't happen often enough, right? So what's the answer to that? Well, the answer is to fix it in the first place, right? To relieve 20 years of pain, suffering, and getting shot at and everything, right? Because most people don't live through that experience, and that's a fact. So the answer to that is to plug the hole, right? And it's a complex, expensive hole to plug, I can assure you. The statistic, Andre, that scares the crap out of me and that brings me to tears is one that you may not have known yet, and that is that out of those 100,000+ each year that are homeless right now, 44,000 of those are kids. Right now, there are 44,000 kids in Australia right now
thinking about it
that are homeless, mate. Right, and that's just not good enough. It is not good enough. We live in one of the greatest, smartest, wealthiest, most forward countries on the planet. How is this happening? It's remarkable. How's it happening? Furthermore, with COVID, and obviously that has significantly increased the need and the severity of what's going on. We have just a fraction under 1 million homes in Australia right now that are on the verge of homelessness.
Is that right?
That are in danger of homelessness, right? 1 million, right? You've got some suburbs that are increasing in regards to homelessness by 16%. It's ridiculous, right? So more than ever, this is a hole that we need to plug urgently. 9 out of 20 of the hotspots for homelessness are actually in Queensland. Right? Of the national hotspots, right? So there's plenty going on here. And mate, just so you understand the gravity of the hole, the gravity just for Queensland alone, to plug that hole entirely, would cost us $1.7 billion. So that's just for Queensland, right? So, I absolutely love what we do for Vinnies. It is just, they are certainly, why am I an ambassador for them? Because I think they do. I think they plug the hole for homelessness better than anyone else in the country. I think they care more about it than anyone else in the country. They take it to the pollies more than anyone else in the country. And we're doing great work. I'm very blessed and honoured that I get to sit on a strategy team with some of the smartest people in our country that are on that team with me. Certainly none of them look like me. And I'm probably the only one without an MBA, but it's a real privilege to be by their side, and we're doing great work, mate. We're doing really good work.
So what is your involvement with them on an ongoing basis?
So I'm a brand ambassador for Vinnies Queensland. I've certainly been the keynote speaker at a lot of the events across Australia over the years. But I'll continue to be a brand ambassador for them. I will tell you, you'll be the first to hear this, mate. And I actually met with the CEO, Kevin Mercer, yesterday to talk about this. My business, 2 things. My business, Click Digital, we are going to enter into a partnership with Vinnies. We're going to be the only partner other than IGA supermarkets who do amazing stuff for Vinnies. And 5% of all our company profits will be donated to their cause each year as we continue to grow. And we are growing rapidly. But on top of that, I've called it out that by 2023, I intend on being the lead fundraiser for Queensland, which is going to be quite a feat because that'll be, I will need to turn up with about $100,000 by that point. But it's a commitment I'm willing to make because it will be exactly 10 years since I was homeless in that park with a gun against my head. And I need Australia to understand that people can change. I need them to know.
Well, there's ever a better example is you, mate.
Thank you, my friend.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Good segue into the next thing I wanted to ask you about. So something that very few people will know about is that as this episode goes live, you'll also be turning the page in the next chapter in your career.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely. So I've founded a digital startup called Click Digital, where I'm now the CEO and founder of the business. We are certainly off and racing. It's an amazing journey. Talking about loving the process before, I've certainly fallen in love with this new process in my life. We're a full suite digital agency based on delivery. I certainly identified over my career a dire need in the digital marketing industry for there to be a Google or Shopify specialist that really delivers on their promises. There's not getting into it too much, but there's a lot of companies out there that are doing the wrong thing. Small to medium businesses are the guts of Australia, right?
Employ 86% of Australia's population?
It's the guts of the country, right? So we need to look after them. And the statistics on businesses that fail in the first year, as you would know, are absolutely horrific. What gets us out of bed each morning is a vision to empower Australian businesses online. We're obviously here today in one of our customers' front yards.
Spectacular venue.
Smoked Garage. Certainly the hottest venue in Brisbane at the moment. There's a free plug. But yeah, it's a real privilege to be able to take these businesses on a journey. We certainly understand that the biggest hurdle to get over in the digital world is trust, right? So someone asked me the other day, Matt, what's the secret sauce to Click Digital? I said, we don't have any. And they said, what do you mean? I said, we don't have any secret sauce. We don't have any free downloadable PDF or the 100 best tips to this or that. We just do our job. We just do our job. We just do what we're meant to do. We understand our trade back to front, and we love what we do. We just service our customers. So that's it.
Fantastic.
Loving the journey.
Congratulations on that, and all the best with that as well.
Thank you, mate.
Sure will be a success, like everything else you've done in your life to date. On that note, I wish we could hang on all day. Will you come back if in a few months' time? We'll see how Click Digital's going and take it from there?
You got a deal. Let's do it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks again for your time. All the best with the next chapter in your career. Congratulations on everything that you've achieved, not just in business today, but also in life. You're an absolute inspiration. If you want to find out more about anything that we've discussed today, please follow the links below in the channel. Get in touch with Matt, get in touch with Vinnies, get in touch with the CEO Sleepout. And until the next episode, we wish you all the very best.